Welcome back to Cross Switch Gaming, everybody. Today we are looking at a very common question we see, which is, what is the Paradise Planning DLC expansion pack, and do I need it for the 3.0 update to decorate my hotel rooms? We're going to take a look at the differences between decorating in the resort hotel on New Horizons with just the base game options versus the Happy Home Paradise Planning DLC, which is downloadable content pack that you can buy from Nintendo. It is either $25 for the expansion pack on its own, or you will get it complimentary with your Nintendo Online subscription, Nintendo Switch Online, if you have that. So we're going to look at the differences, what comes with that DLC pack that you can use on your own island and to decorate your resort hotel, and whether or not we think it's worth it to upgrade with that expansion pack. First off, we're going to head into the airport and we are going to fly to Work, which is the island for the DLC expansion pack. If you purchase the expansion pack or you have it complimentary with your Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you can access an additional part of the game. So it's like an add-on to New Horizons, and that will open up the ability to be a Paradise Planning designer. So you're basically like a house designer. So you do the exterior and the interior. You will do it for Lottie. Lottie has been in other games in the past. When you reach a certain point in New Horizons, Lottie will visit the island if you have the expansion pack, and she will talk to Tom Nook, and Tom Nook will suggest that you become a designer for Lottie, and you will go to work whenever you feel like it off island and head to this special island that it is always summer. Now there is a progression to the DLC pack as well, so you'll start out at a basic level and then eventually you will get to like a superstar designer level, and that will unlock new abilities. The first ability we're going to look at here is with Niko. Niko is the super cute little monkey that helps Lottie. He usually takes you on a boat to the different mini islands where people live and you design their houses. So how you get pillars and partitions in the game come through Niko. So Niko has an idea to build DIY craft recipes that are very unique, and that comes a little bit into the game. After you've designed a handful of houses, Niko's going to have this idea, and he has a craft box in the upstairs area of the Paradise Planning main building. That crafting box, he's going to ask for specific materials. The hardest one probably is the gold, and that comes at the end. That's the very last thing you can make, is the gold pillars and the gold countertops. So it's not that far into the DLC that Niko comes up with this idea to be able to separate rooms. So he gives you the partition, then you can use that in all your designs, and you can take it back with you as the designer to use in your own home on your island. Now you won't be able to use it for your other residents. Like if you have other players on your island, they won't be able to use the partitions. You can't drop them off for them. You can't redesign their houses. That would be something they had to have the DLC to do their own house that way. Same for the pillars and the countertops. You can, however, unlock in New Horizons at a certain point where you can redesign your villager homes if you have the Happy Home Paradise Planning DLC, and so that you will be able to use some of these items in redesigning your villager homes. You will have prompts each time to drop off certain materials if you go check the box, and then once you check that list and you drop off those materials that you acquire from your own island, then you will see the next time around he will give you a DIY recipe for whatever he asked for, and then he will then have another one in the box for you to check for materials and leave those materials. As you can see here, I have just finished all of my pillars and countertop recipes except for the last one, which is the gold. And so I'm going to go over to the storage and pick out my gold that I have. Now all these materials are on my island in my storage. So the Paradise Planning Island doesn't have its own materials or storage. The only thing you can get there is moss and vines and one message bottle on the beach each day to take back to your own island. So then you drop off the materials that he's asked for, and then that is it for the DIY recipes from Niko. That's how you get them. we're going to go into our DIY recipes and take a look at what Niko gives us specifically. So they are just going to be mixed in with your recipes here. So there's the partition wall. You can make these on your own island. Now, if you're using them in the Paradise Planning room design or the hotel room design, you don't have to craft them. They're just there. You do have to craft them if you want them in your own home. You also have the wooden island counters in 2 sizes and the wooden pillar, and those do come in some different colors. The partition wall does not have any options for customization of colors, as you can see, because that directly relates to the walls you pick when you're designing. So it will always match your main wall. Even if you have an accent wall, your partition wall is going to pick up whatever wallpaper you use for your main walls. But the other items that Niko gives you, some of them do actually have customization options for colors. We also have the brick island counters in 2 sizes and the pillar. The simple island counter is basically just like a plain paint color, and there are several colors, and there's a pillar as well. So there's a pillar that matches every counter. The concrete island counters and pillar, those do not have colors, they're just concrete. The marble island counter does come in 3 colors, I believe, 2 sizes and a pillar as well. Then we have the steel island counter, which looks very similar to the concrete. It does not have any color variations either. It is just steel. And then of course the pillar as well on that one. Eventually, once you finish all of them, he will give you the ultimate DIY recipe of the gold tall counter, the shorter counter, and the gold pillar. Now, the other things that are specific to the DLC upgrade, things like room size differences or changing certain features of rooms, that comes just from playing the DLC by itself. And then there's going to be another additional thing that is called Soundscapes, where you can add certain sounds to the rooms. So like an ocean sound or a crowd noise, that's going to come through Wardell. So Wardell is going to sort of warm up to you over time. He's very shy. One day when you're working on the island, he is going to go out to the beach and sit on a log and stare out at the ocean and talk very deep thoughts about nature. And he is going to give you the idea to have nature sounds in your designs. Alright, so we have headed over to the resort hotel now. We are going to go inside and talk to Leilani about redecorating one of our hotel rooms. And first I'm going to show you about redecorating one of our hotel rooms with my main character, who already has worked through most of the DLC progression. So I have pretty much everything unlocked other than the gold pillars and counters like we saw earlier. That's the last thing I have to unlock, but everything else I have from the DLC pack that I can use in decorating hotel rooms. And I'm going to pick one of the rooms that I've already done because I have finished them all already. So we're going to pick standard and we're going to redesign what we already have. Poor Bunny, she's just gonna have to wait. You can just adjust your rooms, by the way, if you're wondering. You can just go in and fix something if you want to add something or change something, but I'm gonna start over. We're gonna go with something simple today, just so I can show you how the DLC elements work. We're just gonna concentrate on that only. Okay, here we are in a blank room. This is the normal size room for the standard. We're going to start off by looking on the left side of the screen here. We have some options. So once you go into the main mode by hitting down on the D-pad, you can then hit left on the D-pad, and here you're going to see room size adjustments. This is only available if you have the Happy Home Paradise Planning DLC expansion pack. This allows me to change the width and the length of the room, both directions. You can do different combinations. This is how you get really big rooms when you're decorating. We also have options to use or not use the windows, and then also changing our hallway colors and designs. This is going to only come with the DLC pack. So if you have a really specific design in mind, you can even change your hallway to match. Then we have different colors for lights. And you can see here in the background, that is the Happy Home Paradise Planning designer background. That kind of helps remind you that that is part of the DLC. So if you ever see that design on anything, that means it came with a DLC pack. Now we have the Soundscapes. So this is what you talk to Wardell about once you progress so far in the DLC. This is basically the main things you can do outside of what Niko gives you. They're all going to be in this section, except for one specific element that we'll get to in a little bit. Okay, so first let's take a look at these partition walls. So we're going to open up our storage by hitting the right button on the D-pad. So it's not actually our storage, but it's everything we've ever used in the game before. So we're going to go over to other, and that is going to be where you find your partition walls and also the counters and pillars as well. So we're going to put the partition wall down in the room, and this way you can see it, and we're going to put 2 in so you can see both directions and what it looks like. You can move them anywhere in the room. They do kind of stick out a little bit from the walls, which is a little strange, but you can cover some of that up with the pillars. We're going to pick a wall here, so we're going to pick the tropical vista. You can see it's my main wall, so it went on to both partition walls. It just automatically goes onto those walls, and then the sides are just kind of a matching color generally. Switching it, it switches the partition walls as well. Then if we want to try like an accent wall, you'll see the back wall changed, but the partition stayed the same as the main wall. That is one thing, you cannot make your partition walls the same as your accent wall, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish they did have that option just for certain design ideas I've had, but at least we have these. So especially if you want to use like window walls and you want to kind of cover up part of the back accent wall or wherever your accent wall is, this can kind of help that theme of the room go all the way around using partition walls. So we're going to pick this nice blue stripe wall, and then we're going to go down back to our tropical vista and make it our accent wall. So here we have our partitions just sitting in the middle of the room. You can see all the way around. It's the main wallpaper design. We're going to pick up our partitions and we're going to put them on the sides. Now you can move them anywhere in the room. You can use them to divide the room into smaller areas, or you can use them like this to have sort of like a big picture window. Now we're going to add some other elements to kind of make this a more defined space. So we're going to add our pillars, and you can pick different colors if you're using simple pillar. Here's some of your options. I'm going to go with the light pale blue to match my stripy walls. I'm going to set them right at the end. Duplicate it by using the right button on the back, so it's the big one on the right Joy-Con. They kind of just finish off that edge of the partition wall, makes it look intentional. And it also makes it have a little more depth from the back wall because the pillars do stand out a little further. Now we're going to add some simple island counters. We're just going to add those along the back, so put them in between your pillars. Now you got the tall island. We're going to put those on the side. This is how a lot of people do like built-in shelves. You can see they kind of stand out away from the partition walls. That's one thing I wish they would fix is the grid in this game. Things have a tendency to stand way out if whatever you're using is centered in the grid, but it's not that noticeable overall if you're not looking from the sides. We're going to duplicate the pillars just so that I have actual walls on the side, so you can line those up right next to each other because they are different widths than the counters, interestingly, and they don't sit in the center of the counter. They sit off to one side or the other. So I like to use a couple at least to sort of fill in that space. It really depends on your design though. Obviously you can put these counters anywhere you want in the room. Same with the pillars. So here are your different variations of the counters. First off, the wooden comes in 3 different wood colors. Then we have the concrete that is just plain. And the brick comes in 3 colors, red, white, and gray. The simple has the most color options. It's more just like a painted wall. The steel is just plain. The marble island counter then has 3 options. These are really pretty, especially if you're doing a new elegant room with some of the new marble items that come from Graham's. You can buy those for yourself, or you can use them to decorate the hotel room. And then of course we'll have the golden set whenever I get that in. We are now going to take a look at some of the specialty design additions, I guess you could say. So this is another element. Once you progress so far in the game, you're going to see Wardell shining things in the background when he's in the main building, and Niko's going to comment about how shiny it is. And so that is going to unlock this special ability that's going to come when you design the next house. Niko's going to be like, hey, do you remember when Wardell did this in the main building? Well, now you can do it in homes. And so you're going to get this adorable little paradise planning outfit that has that same design pattern I mentioned earlier. That is going to be what you use to shine up certain elements and add extra little effects, basically. They do different things. Now there are 3 levels to this, so that's kind of the base one. You can wipe it off by hitting A again. We're going to hold it down a little longer. You're going to get kind of a medium shine. And then the third one is going to be really shiny. So that one really adds a whole lot of effects. If you hold the A button down all the way, it's going to only go to that 3rd level, and then she's just going to be very proud of her work. and it's going to stop for you. So that was Sparkle Blast. Now we have Pitter Pat. That's going to be hearts. So there's some hearts. Next up we have Dizzy Spin. It's going to add like little swirly things. And notice I do not have to wipe off the previous effect before I add the other one. It just changes it if I hold down the A for a second. Now we have Space Blip. Not easy to see, but it would be easier to see in a dark room. Drip Drop, water droplets. Fuzzy Bubs, interesting name for basically a bokeh type effect. Gloom Swirl. Next up we have Steam Shine. Then we have one of my personal favorites, the Burr Burr. We have the Zapmatic. Stress Buzz. Then we have Bobble Shock. Flutter Flap, this is another one of my favorites. I use this one all the time with my plants. Chatter Blurb just adds little quote boxes basically. A lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't realize it at first either. You can hit X on your right Joy-Con. That's your custom designs. So if you want to change any of these effects to have a custom design, you can actually do that. Now you're going to see it up in the top right corner on top of the Sparkle Blast. When I shine the plant, it's going to take that effect that I chose in the menu and overlay that custom design onto it. So it's going to pick up that custom design in whatever way that effect does. So for the Sparkle Blast, you can see it just kind of changes the color mainly. If you look really close and you slow it down, you can see it's like basically the middle of that design that's kind of showing, but it's really just going to change the color essentially. As you pick each one, it's going to change the custom design to be whatever that effect is, which is really cool. I thought it would only just do like a generic effect. It depends on the effect you pick. Here I've picked the Space Blip. That looks like the design kind of in a very skinny form going straight up towards the ceiling. So that's a pretty cool element that comes along with the DLC that you're not going to get in the base game, just like you're not going to get the partitions or the pillars or the counters. That is something I do think is very unique and a cool addition that can really add some movement to your designs. So if we fast forward here to me designing the room, you can see I've used all of those elements together. I have put in the partition walls, I have used the pillars and the counters. The cool thing with the partition walls too is sometimes other elements will clip through them. You kind of just have to experiment with it to find out, like those flower lights in the background, you don't actually see the light where it's attached to the wall, it's just sticking through the partition, so it gives it a different look. That's all of your elements from the DLC pack that you can bring over into designing the resort hotel space. So it does add a lot to the game. I think the most beneficial elements that get added in with the DLC are the partition walls and the pillars. I use those the most. They show up in almost all of my designs just to add more depth to a very otherwise square room. Also, just being able to change the size of the room is a huge bonus. That is something I really like with the DLC pack, because otherwise you're stuck to the same size and same shape of room all the time, and they're kind of small. So when you want to use especially bigger furniture like the antique furniture, or you want to add anything larger into the room, it can make it really hard for the characters to navigate around, because there's a lot of sort of invisible space around some of those elements that they have a difficult time navigating. So being able to expand the size of your room can really help alleviate that problem and make the space more usable and enjoyable. Now obviously that's not going to matter if you're just going in to design a room and you're not going to look at it again and you don't really care how the characters like interact and do things. But I think it's fun to watch the characters interact with the elements, so I like the space to be usable if possible, so they can actually like sit on the couches or use the TV or whatever it is. It's just like a cute part of the game that I like to see, and so I like being able to adjust my room size so that's possible for them to do. Okay, switching over now to one of our other characters on the island that has not done the DLC pack. We do not have the expansion with this character. Goalie is now going to decorate a room. Now this is her first time ever doing this, so I went through all of the kind of pre-explanations of what this is going to be already. She's going to have me do a VIP room right away just because I already did a standard room with my main characters. It's going to be the exact same thing. The only difference is the VIP rooms don't stick around for more than a day, which I feel like is really backwards. I don't understand why the VIP rooms wouldn't last longer than the standard rooms, but that's what they decided to do. And we're going to go into the decorating mode and see the difference now between the DLC and the base game and what's missing when you do not have the DLC expansion pack for the Paradise Planning Edition. Okay, so I've picked the Stellar Room. I do not have many things to work with Goldie because we haven't gotten very far with this character. We are going to go into decorating mode. Take a look here on the left. Same options for the main elements, so you can change your lights. You can't change the color of the lights, but you can change whether they're on or off or blue or yellow or clear, whatever. You have your order form, your storage basically, on the right arrow on the D-pad. You have decorating mode when you click the down arrow. You notice though that the shining ability is not there, so you cannot press the left side button on the top, on the back of the Joy-Con. That's not there, so you can't add any of those effects. That's not available because that's part of the DLC. If I go into decorating mode, so I hit the down button on the D-pad, that's going to open up that second kind of round of options where we did have the DLC options on the left side button. So you then press the left button on the D-pad. That is not here now. So all we can do is change the lights in the room and open up our order form. So no options for changing the room size. This is the room size we're stuck with, and no options for the hallway or the windows, the light color, or the soundscapes. That's all locked behind the DLC, so that doesn't even show up for me at all. You can see now if I go into my order form, there are no pillars, no partitions, and no counters. All of that comes with the Paradise Planning. So the base game's pretty limited, so if you want to add more depth to your room, you got to be really picky about what you use, because things are going to take up a lot of space. But there are a few things here and there that people like to use to kind of add a different element to the room, make it look like a little bit different shape. So like these bookshelves can be sort of used as a partition wall. It just depends on what you're going for, what you have available to you. Clearly I do not have much available with this character at this time because she's fairly new. We haven't gone very far into the game progression with Goldie. So if you want to have any kind of freedom with designing rooms with bigger spaces and more than just a square, I would say the DLC pack is definitely worth it for that. So here is my finished room, the Stellar Room. Kind of shows you what the base game's limitations are when it comes to designing. And some of the elements I've mentioned that are not necessarily part of the DLC by itself, they are part of it, like you can use them, but you can also acquire them outside of having the Happy Home Paradise DLC. Things like accent walls or overhead lighting, that comes with a Pro Decorator license that comes from the Nook Miles. After you've learned how to decorate the inside of your own house, you can buy that Pro Decorator license with your miles, and you'll be able to then use things like overhead lights and accent walls. So that's not locked behind the DLC, but if you have the DLC, Lottie basically like reimburses you and pays you for having that decorating license, so you get those miles back. So it's kind of like part of it in that way, but you can get that separate. But the partition walls, the pillars, the counters, some of those other elements only available with the DLC upgrade. The big question coming out of all this is, do we think the Happy Home Paradise Planning downloadable content expansion pack, that is a mouthful, is that worth it or is it not? If you're really just wanting to decorate the hotel and you're only interested in the base game, we would say yes if you really love decorating and the limitations of the base game frustrate you. It does add a lot to the game to be able to adjust those room sizes and use those partition walls in particular. That is something that I think is worth it, particularly if you have the Nintendo Online subscription for any other reason, like if you like to play with friends online, or you have it for other games that are available through there, the older games like Nintendo 64 or the GameCube. If you have that subscription online, you can download the Happy Home Paradise expansion for free through that subscription. It comes complimentary with it. you can then not have to pay the extra $25 on top of that to have that Happy Home Paradise DLC. It just comes with the subscription. If you don't have the online subscription, is it worth $25? I would say yes if you're going to actually play the expansion and do the Happy Home Paradise decorating a lot. Like if you love to decorate, I definitely think it's worth it. It's something that if I didn't have the online subscription, like if I just stopped paying for the subscription, I would go buy the DLC myself for the $25 because I do think it adds a lot to the game, especially being able to decorate your villagers' homes on your own island. I really like that addition because I'm not a big fan of how they do the villager homes, especially your original villagers. They just sort of moved in and threw things all over their house. I like being able to match that to my island theme or to the villager. Mom and I both love to actually decorate. That's something we enjoy. So we get a lot more out of that expansion pack than maybe somebody who just enjoys the basics of the game does, that doesn't really get into all that decorating. If that's the case, you might not be all that into decorating the hotel either. So this probably wouldn't be worth it for you to upgrade. But if you really want to add a bonus to your resort hotel experience, then yeah, I would say the DLC is definitely worth looking into. I really prefer using those elements from Happy Home Paradise. I don't generally design a lot of rooms without those elements because they really add more to the designs. Mom and I both use the DLC expansion pack way more than we thought we would, and we really enjoy it more than we thought we would as well. Hopefully this video was helpful in explaining all of those differences from the base game to the DLC and kind of gives you an idea of what you're missing or what might be a good bonus. If you found this video helpful and you like guides, please give this a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel because we are doing a lot of these guides in Animal Crossing, and also we like to do some game reviews and other guides for other games on the Nintendo Switch, so we'd love to have you join us. Thank you so much for watching. Check out our playlist and other videos just like this one. Have a blessed day, everyone, and we will see you in our next video.